Jon Jones has his title taken away from him, stripped after being arrested for a hit and run. We were covering this earlier this week. You can check out that video too, when we saw that the allegations are coming out that he was involved in a hit and run when all the paperwork was there to show that a Jonathan Jones ran from the scene of a crime. So Jon Jones, again, there's a picture, as you can see across your screen, of him obviously ducking out of the way, not get his face shot of the crime itself, but I don't want to say it's embarrassing for Jon Jones, but he obviously is having issues cleaning up his act. And getting your title stripped has now opened the door for Johnson versus Cormier to be the new title holder. So, in the aftermath of all of this, the one thing that stands out to me is that the UFC is doing a much better job of cracking down on their fighters to set an example. It was the right move, in my opinion, to strip his title away. I'm curious your guys' thoughts, joined by Francis and Joaquin. Joaquin, let's start with you at the end. What do you think about Jon Jones and his title?
It's sad. I think it's the right move by the UFC, like you said. But this is another time where we're seeing an athlete that could be a transcendent athlete. Look, Jon Jones is the kind of guy who can transcend the regular fight fan. He's a super athlete, and he's a guy that we've seen can bring in big revenue, big markets, and a lot of people will watch him. So to have him out of the fight game is a big loss for the UFC, and it hurts MMA.
21-1 MMA record in the UFC. Inside the octagon, the guy looks unstoppable. Outside the octagon, he can't stop his actions from taking a hold of him. Now, at least with Dana White, UFC, and we know that Jon Jones also tweeted out of recent that he said he needs some soul searching to do. Look, man, you can hit the PR scene as hard as you want and try to change your image to people, but if you're a forgiving UFC fan, you're going to want to see Jon Jones fight again and maybe make his title back. If you're not so forgiving, all a lot of people are going to see, and I don't want to lump them into one big group, but what most people will see is that Jon Jones can't stop fucking up.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to, even if you dislike his actions the most out of anyone, all major UFC fans are going to want to see him back. Same thing that happened with Mike Tyson, same thing that happened with Floyd Mayweather wasn't punished, but when they get involved in any out the ring or out of the octagon actions, they still are so prominent in the sport that they're going to come back. And I can't imagine him not making a return, but at this moment in time, his mind's not on his sport. His mind is on other things, and he is clearly dictating his way of life. And they're far too close together. Like his previous instance of cocaine to now this. They're far too close together for me to think that there's any sort of effort being made to change this way around. And I feel bad for the kids that look up to someone like Jon Jones as someone who they want to be like in the sport. And the sport of UFC as a whole, I have to give credit to Dana White and all those in charge over there to be taking action, to be taking swift action in the case of stripping him of his title. So then, therefore, it will hopefully send a message that whilst you are in this sport and that you cannot break the rules and you cannot act out of character for someone that's supposed to represent this sport, this professionalism of this sport. And that goes for anything, like we said before with someone like Nick Diaz. It goes for someone like that who smokes marijuana whilst he's training for a fight or whatever it is. It's like there's rules there. Don't break them, or you're going to have your title stripped. And the same thing should be taken for all measures. Even someone like Anderson Silva, who is found doping. You know what I mean? There's actions need to be taken.
But I think that in terms of what he's gone through, I don't think his image is that tarnished. Because you look at other people that have come back from crippling media issues, right? And the thing is, he hasn't been caught using, performance-enhancing substance like steroids that people generally worldly condemn. He hasn't been someone involved in domestic violence. There's a lot of people that are coming back from much tougher stories. I don't think anyone thinks more about Jon Jones other than this is a troubled kid with a lot of talent that's just getting into a few problems. But Jon Jones can make a comeback. I think he will come back into the spotlight and handle business. And when he comes back, the public will be ready to welcome him back.
So if Jon Jones makes a comeback, I do think you're right, Joaquin. I think you're right too, Francis. When it comes to if he makes a comeback, he's going to be welcome back, but that will always be in the back of your mind. When you see the guy fight is, if he wins again, how long could he actually hold the title outside the octagon, let alone inside the octagon? So now, Johnson versus Cormier. Cormier lost. And now he has a chance to get the title that I personally don't believe would be rightfully his. I don't believe it's rightfully Johnson's if he wins the fight.
But you could make the argument of whether we know that Jones is a better fighter than Cormier, but was it rightfully his? He broke the rules. He took technically in terms of drugs, like he'd taken cocaine before. Like I just make the case of like people will sit and they'll pick apart what drugs influence you the most. If they're not allowed in the sport, then let's just not take them.
So it was unethically his.
Yes,
yet
for
still
me,
his.
yeah, still his. But I just don't think that. Like, I think that if anything, Cormier, if he comes back and wins this, which I don't know who's going to win this, then I feel that they should feel that this is rightfully theirs. Like, there's a fighter in there who now should be taken out of the category because he's not living by the rules of a professional athlete in this. It's like saying that when I don't know any other example off the top of my head, but it's like I feel that people who don't live and breathe by their sport to the point that they respect it enough to not do these things don't deserve to be champions. I feel I'm a little bit spoiled with my favourite sport because in my sport I look to guys like Ronaldo and Messi. Don't get me wrong, there's people in soccer who have acted like this in the past, and there's plenty of people involved in cases, but when you look at someone, model examples like Messi and Ronaldo, you can't help but feel somewhat annoyed and also disappointed when you look at sports like a sport that I generally enjoy, like the UFC, and these athletes don't seem to be taking it as serious outside of it.
Yeah, well, I think Cormier can be a legitimate champion. He knows himself, though, for him to be recognized as the world #1 and the world champion, he's going to have to beat Jon Jones eventually. Yeah. But he can only beat who's in front of him right now. And that means getting in the ring against Johnson and winning it and taking the interim title or whatever you want to call it, but becoming champion and maybe fighting Gustafsson or whoever's next in the queue, and then eventually getting a chance to beat Jon Jones. He's had one chance to do it so far, and I'm sure he'd love to have another chance to do it again.
Yeah, the one thing I do like about Cormier is he brings the wrestling aspect into the octagon. He was an Olympiad beforehand, and again, it's still going to be a great fight to watch, Johnson versus Cormier. I again, personally believe, though, I want to see Jon Jones get his fucking act together.
Yeah,
just so we can see him back in the ring. I'm sorry, not the ring, the octagon, to continuously keep winning titles and making the sport more exciting to watch. Having said that, we are all excited for Johnson versus Cormier. We will be watching Johnson versus Cormier and, of course, covering Johnson versus Cormier. In terms of Jon Jones, what do you guys think? Do you think his title should have been stripped in the first place? And do you think that he'll make a comeback in the UFC and rise the ranks to become a champion once again? From Joaquin, Francis, and Jason, don't forget to subscribe to TYT Sports. You can check us out on Twitter, Facebook, all the great social media outlets. We'll see you next time.